Greetings from the King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence in the Kingdom of Bahrain. We are honoured to join our friends around the world today to commemorate the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The 27th of January is a date that we must not allow to be buried in history. We must continue to commemorate this day and share the stories of the horrors of the Holocaust with today's generations and future generations to ensure this can never be repeated again. At the King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence, we are guided by the visionary philosophy of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, who says, "Ignorance is the enemy of peace," and therefore we must learn to share our stories, live together by the tenets of our faith. The King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence tries actively to do this on a global basis with our partners around the world. And we are honoured to have been the very first NGO to sign an MOU with the US State Department in November 2020. In the MOU that the King Hamad Global Centre signed with the US State Department, we very specifically adopted the IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism. And this was an important point for us to move forward in our work around the world. And we hope that this will give the confidence and inspiration to others around the world to adopt this same definition. Well, anti-Semitism is not something that affects only our Jewish brothers and sisters. Anti-Semitism is an attack on religious freedom for every faith in the world. And so we join the world today in asking everyone to fight this horror, this evil.
Hello from Los Angeles and Simon Wiesenthal Center. I'm Rabbi Abraham Cooper, the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action. It has been said that nations sign treaties, but only people make peace. On this International Holocaust Memorial Day, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, together with our partners in Bahrain, have asked peacemakers to reflect on the Nazi Holocaust, the lessons from the past. From the moment we met His Majesty King Hamad, we knew we were in the presence of a courageous, trailblazing leader for peace. His, One of his first moves, going back 4 years ago, was to become the first Arab head of state to put in writing that all people have the right to pray as they see fit to God, and even the right not to pray. In response to a request from the Wiesenthal Center, he dispatched 24 faith leaders to Jerusalem 3 years ago. So we certainly were not surprised when Bahrain was in the leadership and one of the first nations, along with the UAE, to sign the Abraham Accords. So today, as we yearn for peace, we turn to the concept of memory, because memory of the past is the key for the future of all the children of Abraham. Ladies and gentlemen, the peacemakers.
I remember as a child, one word in my language that I spoke as a child was Polish only. My parents in Poland didn't speak to me, not in Hebrew, not in Yiddish, only Polish. And this was some help for me later on in the camps. They thought that I'm a Polish child. The question that I had in my mind all the time is one word in Polish, dlaczego. Dlaczego means why. Why? What did I do wrong? Why do you punish me? Why am I'm starving? And why I'm freezing? And why am I beaten? And why I am alone? You took away my father. I was 5 years old. You took my mother. I was 7 years old. I left only with a brother. And my question is, dlaczego? Lama, why? I didn't know that I'm Jew. I knew that I'm Jew. I knew that my father was a chief rabbi in a city in Poland, but I didn't understand why, as a Jew, I have to suffer. And if I'm a Muslim, and if I'm a Christian, if I am atheist, this is the answer: to beat me, to make me starving. Why? Even now, I don't have an answer for this question, the childish question, Lachego. Lama, why? Pourquoi? What did I do wrong? There is no difference between languages and states and nations and races. We are all mankind. We are all children of Adam and Eve. We are all creatures of the Lord Almighty. And we do believe that there is a Lord Almighty. And He wants us to live in peace, to love each other, to help each other, to assist as much as is possible. A Soviet child, boy of 18 years old, Fyodor Mikhailchenko of the city of Rostov in Russia, endangered his life to save mine in Buchenwald, in Barak number 8. Fyodor, why did he do it? Because he was a man, because he was a human being, because he was a more. He didn't ask me if I'm a Jew and if he is atheist or a communist or a Russian, whatever. He was a man and I was a man. He could help me. He stole potatoes from the German sect to cook for me a soup, daily soup of potatoes. He was 18, I was 7.5. My message is to all of you: forget who you are. Remember, you are people, you are mensch, you are creators of God. We are children of the Lord Almighty. Let's live in peace. Let's ask only the plus of each of other, and there are a lot of pluses, and forget the minus. Don't look at what is difference between us. There is a difference, but so what? But we are human beings. Let's live in peace. Let's shake hands. Let's shake hands. That's what I said to even President Mubarak, Hosni Mubarak, in his palace, and later on with Sheikh al-Azhar. Same words. And they accepted it. They agreed. So if they agreed, Desmond Tutu passed away last month in South Africa. I visited him in Cape Town, in South Africa. Even he, who was not a great admirer of the state of Israel, but he knew that the Jews and the Arabs and the Christians are all the same, creatures of God. So the end of our long talk was, let's shake hands together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, 80 years ago, humanity reached a breaking point. Much of civilization was morally bankrupt. The Nazis and their many accomplices introduced new shades of barbarity, paved new roads towards the abyss, and demonstrated how dark the world can become when blind fear and hatred are permitted to flourish. The Holocaust exposed a depth of cruelty and despair previously unimaginable. Yet, 80 years later, what was once inconceivable and shocking beyond belief is currently at times forgotten. The historic truth that was undeniable not long ago is now called into question by bad people. Ladies and gentlemen, ours is the last generation privileged to hear a first-hand account from a Holocaust survivor, from a partisan, from the righteous amongst the nations. In a few years' time, the duty to never forget will be ours alone. The obligation to tell our children's children about the horrors of the Holocaust, to warn them about the dangers of anti-Semitism, hatred, racism, and intolerance will be entirely up to us. For this reason, I commend the King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, both organizations committed to sustaining the truth and passing on the legacy of the Holocaust, for initiating this multi-faith gathering to commemorate the United Nations International Holocaust Remembrance Day. By convening on this important day, 77 years after the Red Army liberated Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, the most gruesome of death camps, you are actively assuming responsibility for the memory of the Holocaust. Each of you is passing the lessons on to the generations to follow. You're also reminding us of the remarkable capacity of the human spirit to transcend even the most profound tragedy and conscientiously reimagine and recreate our world. This important gathering demonstrates how we can come together, people of all faiths, background, and creeds, and choose to honor what is sacred in all of us. It is also very significant and meaning to us that the most catastrophic event of the modern era is openly spoken of and taught about and taught in Islamic countries. As the Abraham Accords prove, even the most obstinate walls between peoples can be transformed into bridges when we allow acknowledgement of our common humanity to overpower long decades of festering fear and distrust, and forego an entirely new path for ourselves, for our children, and for our world. Thank you. Salam alaikum, and may we all teach the world to become a better world.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. International Holocaust Remembrance Day offers us an opportunity to reflect upon the need for a just and harmonious world order built upon respect for the equal rights and dignity of every human being. A world order committed to the elimination of every form of discrimination and oppression. A world order that ensures stability, security, and lasting peace for the diverse peoples and nations that inhabit this precious earth. Holocaust remembrance serves as a memorial and vivid reminder of the cruelty, violence, and suffering that so many human beings, acting in the name of their group identity, whether ethnic, racial, religious, or political, have for thousands of years inflicted upon others. This pattern of malignant behavior continues to threaten humanity and civilization itself to the present day. The Holocaust shocked the conscience of humanity and forced the international community to acknowledge the consequences of encouraging unbridled hatred between those who possess different group identities. From the ovens of Auschwitz and the rubble of 2 world wars, there emerged a broad peace aspiration to establish a new world order founded upon the highest civilizational and humanitarian ideals. Ideals that represent our collective legacy as human beings and embody the noblest teachings of religion throughout the millennia. Ideals that we must cultivate within ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren in the form of noble character and virtue until they are firmly established within and shape society at large. The rules-based international order that emerged after the Second World War, beginning with the United Nations Charter, the birth of the UN itself, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is still young, imperfect, and highly vulnerable to subversion. The gradual erosion of the post-war international order threatens global peace, stability, and security, and the very underpinnings of civilization itself. The international community, including each and every one of us as individual human beings, is faced with a momentous choice. Shall we indulge the all too human instinct to feel anger, hatred, and revenge, and thus perpetuate the cycle of animosity and violence that has haunted our world since the dawn of history? Or shall we choose compassion and embrace the better angels of our nature, which urge us to love and respect one another and unite in striving to create a more dignified and noble future for all humanity? We do not have time to wait for anger, hatred, and a collective yearning for revenge to subside. Our actions will determine what kind of world our children and grandchildren inherit. Today, in remembrance of the Holocaust and its millions of victims, Nahdlatul Ulama and I wish to raise our voices in a simple, heartfelt call. Let us choose compassion. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Hello, I'm pleased to join my dear friends at the Simon Wiesenthal Center today, Rabbi Marvin Hier and Rabbi Abraham Cooper, in addressing this important event alongside the King Hamad Center for Peaceful Coexistence in the Kingdom of Bahrain. It's fitting that these organizations gather us today for the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Even before the Abraham Accords, they've worked tirelessly to forge peace between the peoples of the United States, Israel, Bahrain, and other countries. This is truly righteous work. The psalmist told us to seek peace and to pursue it. When I was Secretary of State, the King Hamad Center for Peaceful Coexistence signed a memorandum of understanding with our anti-Semitism envoy, Ilan Carr. In many ways, it was the first among Arab states, but especially because that MOU recognized the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. My friend King Hamad and the Bahrainis deserve credit not only for making peace with the state of Israel, but leading the way towards a warm and strong peace throughout the entire region. Since 2005, the United Nations has designated January 27th as International Holocaust Remembrance Day to honor the memory of the victims of the Holocaust. This day was chosen because it's the day that Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp was liberated. Today, the minds of many in the international community, beginning with the United Nations itself, also must be liberated. There are too many leaders around the world, even in Europe, who are more than happy to honor the memory of dead Jews without working diligently to protect, respect, and honor those Jews who are alive today. Holocaust denial, unbelievably and sadly, still persists in the darkest parts of our world, and with the help of social media companies, is broadcast to the rest of it. Due to the wicked, insidious efforts of the Ayatollah Khamenei, whose state policy is Holocaust denial, there are those who dream of another Holocaust. We must not allow such a tragedy to happen. We must not permit an affront to our Creator to ever occur again. The Holocaust is an ever-present reminder to all of us that when people speak of genocide, we must believe them and we must oppose them with all of our might. The psalmist also said, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved." So long as we endeavor to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive and prevent it from ever occurring again, we too shall be moved. Thank you, and God bless you all.
First, it is my honor to once again participate in a program sponsored by the King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence, with whom we've had a deep and meaningful relationship. The honor of being with His Majesty King Hamad and watching over the years his deep commitment to fighting hate and building a world of mutual respect and tolerance has inspired us to do more. I am especially honored to be in a program with President Isaac Herzog and Chief Rabbi Yisrael Meir, with whom the center has had a decades-long relationship, and other distinguished leaders from Indonesia, the Gulf, and the United States. As we commemorate International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we should ask ourselves, what have we learned from the great tragedy of the Shoah? This year is the 80th anniversary of the Wannsee Conference, which took place on January the 20th, 1942, when 15 leaders of Hitler's Third Reich sat down to plan the final solution, a meeting which led to the murder of 6 million Jews, 1/3 of the entire world's Jewish population. Let us never forget that of the 15 participants in the meeting, 8 of them were PhDs from leading universities around the world. Reinhard Heydrich, the senior official who planned the meeting, told Adolf Eichmann before it began, "I'm concerned that we may not meet our objective because there are too many intellectuals at the meeting." But alas, when the issue was brought up, every one of those intellectuals with PhDs immediately embraced the concept of the final solution and gave their approval to murder all of Europe's Jews, all in 90 minutes over drinks. How ironic and tragic that even today, 80 years later, intellectuals from countries from all over the world are eager to deal with Iran, despite the fact that the Ayatollah denies the Holocaust, says there never was an Auschwitz. Simon Wiesenthal was an architect by profession who loved to build homes. But when the Nazis murdered 89 members of his family, he became a Nazi hunter, not because he wanted to, but because he cared about restoring justice and preserving democracy. That is what motivates us at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, what motivates Rabbi Lau and all the survivors. Because for us, every day is Holocaust Remembrance Day. So my friends, here are 3 lessons for all who hear our voices today. 1, never confuse educational degrees with ethics. 2, when someone threatens to kill you and all who are dear to you, take them at their word. Hitler first wrote about the plan to eradicate Jews in 1919, more than 2 decades before Wannsee. 3, heed the words of Simon Wiesenthal, who said, "Hope lives when people remember."
Hi, this is Reverend Johnnie Moore, President of the Congress of Christian Leaders, a global representative body of the largest evangelical movements in the entire world. And I am pleased to join such a distinguished group of leaders to reflect upon this somber occasion, the annual International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This day becomes more important every year that passes between the Holocaust and our present day. Now, multiple generations, very few Holocaust survivors left to tell the stories, to recount the tragic experiences that they felt themselves. It isn't a surprise to me that the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence are those convening such a distinguished group of leaders, because these are 2 organizations that have decided to invest all of their energy, all of their time, and all of their effort into bringing communities of faith together all around the world in pursuit of mutual good. That also includes coming together to remember tragic moments in history, like this moment in history. And when I reflect on the Holocaust as a young Christian, recognizing that so many people used Christianity as a means to persecute the Jews for so many centuries, I reflect upon a couple of lessons, and I do it intentionally on a day like today. The first lesson is that when a leader or a nation threatens genocide, we should believe them. We shouldn't talk ourselves out of it to convince ourselves that there isn't evil like that in the world. No, we have to take them at their word, and we have to act accordingly. Number two, the only way to confront evil isn't through using brilliant and fancy words. It's not through issuing statements from the capitals all around the world. It's through action, through real, deliberate action. Appeasement always fails if you're trying to appease this grotesque form of evil that we saw exhibited in its most potent form in all of human history at the occasion of the Holocaust. And then the third lesson that I reflect upon on a day like this is the importance of remembrance. That we have to remember, we have to tell the stories, we have to recognize what happened in our history, what's possible in the future. And it helps us to be more motivated to do our work today, to bring together the good. As I often say, the remedy for the worst of religion in the world is the best of faith. And that's what's happening today. As people of all kinds of different faiths, people who've had personal experiences have spoken to us on this global gathering. Those who came to live their lives many generations later have reflected upon the experience. I was struck most recently with the story of a 98-year-old Holocaust survivor. Her name is Lily Ebert. Lily now has 10 grandchildren and 34 great-grandchildren. And we know Lily's story because her 17-year-old great-grandson, Dove, decided to write a book called Lily's Promise. A beautiful, powerful reflection on the importance of remembering those we've lost and those who survived and all of the lessons that bear repeating and those that must never be repeated again. Never, ever again. And so on this International Holocaust Day, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, where leaders from all around the world gathered together at the United Nations, dedicated this day for this purpose, let us recognize again, let us recommit today that we, each and every one of us, especially those of us who are leaders, must do everything in our power to remember the victims of that horrific event and to ensure it never happens again. And the beauty of this International Holocaust Remembrance Day and this event, these two organizations that convene us, is it shows us the power of peace in the face of evil. That we are stronger when we stand together because evil does not discriminate when it decides to eliminate those it disdains. So thank you for watching today. Thank you to all my many, many friends who've gathered along with me to offer personal reflections. And may this Remembrance Day leave a lasting impression on each and every one of us. And may we in turn leave a lasting impression on our children and our grandchildren so that never again will actually mean never again.
Thank you, Reverend Johnnie Moore, and thank you to all of our participants from around the world. In closing, I turn back the microphone to Betsy Matheson from Manama, Bahrain, to share one story that took place recently in Manama that summarizes our concerns and our hopes for the future. Thank you for watching.
When a leading French rabbi visited the Kingdom of Bahrain, and we invited him to celebrate Hanukkah in the synagogue in Bahrain for the first time since 1948. As we left the synagogue after this wonderful ceremony, the rabbi had tears in his eyes, and I thought perhaps it was because it was a very poignant moment for him to celebrate Hanukkah for the first time in so many years. But the rabbi told me, no, the reason I'm weeping is with joy, because here in the Kingdom of Bahrain, for the first time for many years, I was able to walk into a synagogue, to worship, to pray, to celebrate my faith, without having to walk through a street filled with armed guards, with guns, with tanks. And he said, this is something uniquely special to the Kingdom of Bahrain.